Hi everyone, it's 2 o'clock, so we are going to kick off with our webinar, Feed Management. Oh, I can't speak today. Feed Management, the Feed Maturity Pyramid. For those of you who tried to join us for this webinar yesterday, thank you so much for coming back today. Unfortunately, due to technical errors, we were not able to run it. Now, before we get started and before I pass you off to our amazing speaker, I would just like to take you through some housekeeping. The first thing is today's webinar will be 30 minutes long. There will be questions at the end. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat to your right. And the session is being recorded. So for any reason, if you need to duck out, you'll receive it tomorrow, and you can also share that with your friends and colleagues. Now, our speaker today is Fred Maude. He's head of product development at Incubeta. Fred has been working with the company for about 4 years now, has won multiple awards, and in that time has been the champion of our feed management services. He has also been running performance shopping since long before the CSS program even existed. Now, that is me done, and I will pass you over to Fred.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Hope everyone's safe and well. If, like me, you have been wondering what you're going to be doing over the bank holiday weekend to pass the time, then my hope is that this session, the webinar, and also feed management will give you something to think about over the coming weekend. Before I kick into some more serious bits, what I wanted to do is kind of frame feed management and what it really means for our marketing. To do that, what I want to do is use The Water Boy. For anyone who hasn't seen The Water Boy, it is a film about Bobby Boucher, who's in the shot at the moment, and how he's a water boy for his college team, and he gets picked to play in the team. His coach, Coach Klein, tells him to use the memories of people being mean to him as his tackling fuel. Now, he does that. He uses all of his past history and all of his memories, tackles, and he's very, very good at it. Now, in the same way that Bobby uses his memories, we must use our feeds, because the feeds have all of the memories of our campaigns, of our products, and of our customers held within them. So in the same way that his memories are his tackling fuel, our data feeds need to become our marketing fuel. Now, if you get this right, and you really take your feeds to the next level, they shouldn't just be your marketing fuel. They should actually be able to fuel a lot of your business. But how do you do this? Well, today what I want to do is just take you through some very simple steps in order to make feeds work for you and make them the fuel for your business. The way that we do that is using the feed maturity pyramid, and it's very simple in the way that it works. You build up from the bottom and you make sure that you're layering on each of these items as you go through it. If you don't do this and you start doing things at the top of the pyramid, then you're likely to come unstuck. So as I go through this session, working up through the pyramid, what I want you to do is make a note of areas where you maybe haven't done some of the foundations, and actually go back and look at laying those foundations properly, because I promise you, if you don't do it now, then at some stage you will come unstuck. So the first stage, lay the foundations, and it's very simple here, is just ensure data is accurate and that testing is regular. Once you've done this, you can actually look at leveraging your own data. Now, this is really what sets you apart from your competitors. They don't have your data, so do make sure you're using it as much as you possibly can, because it will make a big, big difference compared to your competitors. The other point, once you've done this, is you've got to make sure that you're making centralized decisions and you're not letting each channel make their own individual decisions, i.e. you're not letting siloed decisions happen. And finally, once you've done this, you can actually start doing the cool, exciting stuff and start using third-party tools and APIs to actually take your feed to the next level. And there's a quote at the top of this page that says, "From the heights of these pyramids, 40 centuries look down on us." And this was what Napoleon Bonaparte said, supposedly, when he saw the pyramids in Egypt. And the message here is simple. Don't run before you can walk. It takes time to get up to the top of this pyramid. Don't start doing things at the top because you think they're cool and exciting. Make sure that you're doing everything in a systematic fashion. So start at the bottom. And I'm going to do the same thing today. So I'm going to take you through layer by layer, and just some of the things you should be thinking about as you go through this. Next week, we're going to do a much more deep dive session, a much more practical session into this. But for the moment, we're just going to do top level, what major things you should be thinking about. So lay the foundations. There are two major parts to this. It's ensuring that you have reliable and accurate data, and ensure that that data is being put through a continuous testing framework. So I'm going to go in and just explain a bit more what I mean. So in terms of the accurate data, it's all about pricing and stock. Those are the two major things that you need to ensure that are always accurate and up to date. And within pricing and stock, you can kind of subdivide it into 6 subcategories, of which one of them, monitoring, is overlapped. So I'm going to take you through each of these stage by stage. So the first one here, standard pricing and sale pricing. What I tell people is that you need to update this as regularly as possible. It needs to be always 100% in line with your website. If you're, obviously we all know that Google Shopping, you'll actually lead to disapprovals if you're not in line with your site, but even outside of Google Shopping, if you're looking at your social campaign, anything through the affiliate channel, if your customers are seeing one price in your advertising and then another price on site, that is not good for customer experience. So you need to make sure that this is always up to date and in line with your site. Now I put hourly here. Some sites it's not going to be needed, and then on other sites, for instance, gambling sites, maybe sports bookies, probably 5 minutes is too long in this scenario. So it's really, the message here is just think about how often your site needs updating and is updated, and then make sure that your feeds fall in line with that regularity as well. If you do this right, you can include some really great dynamic messaging through pricing. You can also combine this with promotional adaptations with your sale pricing as well. So certainly some big wins here just by ensuring that your data is up to date and accurate. With shipping labels, more and more, I'm encouraging people to do this. If you are letting people go away and build their own shipping, especially if I'm thinking here you're sending the feed off to third parties, then more often than not, what they'll do is they'll pick that shipping from the website. And then that can get out of date very, very quickly. So by putting the shipping directly into the product feed, or any feed that you're using, whether it's product, whether it's hotel bill feed or whatever, you're actually controlling how shipping is being put into the feed, and therefore it's not going to get out of date. Fourth point, monitoring. This falls into both stock and into pricing. Just make sure you've got daily monitoring set up. One of the ways that's really quick and easy to do is actually using the shopping content API in Merchant Center and linking this back into your feeds. You have a product by product update of issues that are going wrong, and then you overlay this with your own data governance and alerts. So this is more looking at, okay, other things that could go wrong with the feed which aren't catastrophic, but you want to be catching and telling yourself on a daily basis what it is, so you fix the issues. Once you've done all the pricing and the sale pricing, you can look further down at availability and stock level. Everyone has availability in their feed more often than not, but what people don't have is actually the stock levels, and this is available to you. So you should be pushing this through to your marketing campaigns as well. So using stock levels, if you combine this with floodlight tags or with your GA, you can actually start to calculate sell-through rates and actually predict stock outages. This can be really, really useful, obviously from a marketing perspective, because you can stop advertising things when they're not in stock, but also from a business perspective, because you know when you need to restock, and you can predict this very much from your feed. The other point here, encouraging people to do more, is actually put deletion rates and cancellation rates into the feed. This gives you an idea of the product quality and how actually much the products are sticking with the end user at the end of the day. So I'd encourage that. I'm going to go into a bit more detail on that one towards the end of this. But this side of things is basically just making sure that your data is accurate. Once you are happy that your data is accurate, it's not enough to stop there, because obviously you've got to make sure that you're testing your data. There's no point in having data if you don't know if it's working for you or not. Message here is times change, and you need to make sure that you're always reinventing best practices to fall in line with the changes. The key to this is to never stop testing. Our testing framework is split into 2. We have a shopping first, as it's most sensitive to product titles, product type, and description, but there are many other tests that we encourage carrying out across all channels around images, URLs, and labels. So I'm just going to take you through a couple of examples for each. The actual number of things you could be testing is almost endless, but there's a few examples for each. So product title and description, normally you can test these in line together. Things that you should be testing here are adding and removing different product information, seeing how that affects your click-through rates, your impression shares, and also see how it affects, if you do it in shopping, how does it affect your social campaigns? Do you need to be doing the same thing in social that you're doing in Google Shopping, or are they completely different in the way that they respond to the product titles? Other things, change the placement of an attribute. Actually, just moving brand name to the end of the title can have a big impact on campaigns. As a general rule, what we found is that if you're a reseller, then you're actually better whacking that towards the end of the product title. And if you are a manufacturer of the items as well, then you're normally better putting it at the front. But as I say, test it, see what happens, make sure you're reporting back the results. Other things to do is synonyms, switch in, switch out, high heels or pumps. Which one gets you more impressions? Is one cheaper? Does one get you a higher CTR? There's certainly things that you need to be testing around that as well. And there's a classic one around, people don't tend to search for sunflower dress, but they will search for yellow dress. So if you put yellow dress into your title, does that increase your impression share? Does it reduce your CPCs? So on and so forth. Just make sure that you're actually documenting every single test that you're making. Other side of things, product type. My general message here is go as granular as possible. Google use this massively to decide whether you show for a given item or not. So you've got a huge tool at your disposal if you use it correctly. Also, interestingly, unlike title, competitors can't see it. So therefore, actually sneaking in certain things here is great. One thing that we've tested in the past is chucking in competitor names, and you'll see your brand, your impression share shoot up for those competitor terms. So something that's very worth doing, and they won't notice what you're doing, unlike in paid search or paid text ads. If you've done a lot of this testing on the shopping side, there's other things obviously that you need to be thinking about for other channels. Images are one of the major things. Keep testing different images, different products from different angles. Increase the size of the product within the image can have a big effect. It changes depending on the channel. And use alternative images on site. You probably have a bunch on site, so actually filter through them, check which ones work better for which channels, and constantly test this, because as I say, times will change. The product images you want to be serving will also change. Use your shopping, use your feed, use social to actually test new landing pages. It's a great way to see how traffic's going to respond, so you can do A/B tests and split the traffic between two landing pages. And then finally, on this, labels. Originally it was mainly a shopping thing to use custom labels, but now pretty much every channel has custom label fields. You need to be testing what information is best to send to what parties, what partners, what third parties, in order for them to optimize their campaigns to the best possible degree. And that just comes over time, because at first you might think chucking in some information in there is good, but what you later find is it's actually more useful for the other parties to have something different in there. So two important areas in building your foundations: reliable and accurate data, but that's only useful if you are pushing this all through a continuous testing framework as well. Once you are happy you have laid the foundations, i.e. your data is accurate and that testing is regular, you are then free to go and explore the next level, which is potentially one of the most important levels in this, which is leveraging your own data. So what I want to show you very quickly is what is just a standard feed framework. You have an import, your raw data. Generally, you get this from an e-commerce platform. You then map it to a standardized form in the center here, and then transform it for each of the endpoints, whether those endpoints are affiliates, whether it's going into display, going into your Google Ads account, Facebook, whether it's Amazon or any other export. They all might require slightly different changes being made to it. So what you do is you do that transformation right at the end. You standardize everything to start with, you have all the columns you need, and then you transform right at the end. Now, what most people do, and in most scenarios, what I see is they get to this stage and everyone rubs their hands together and they're done, and they move on to the next thing. There is so much more you can do at this stage, so please don't stop here. You should be pulling your performance data back in to your feed and labeling up products based on how well they're performing as a whole, but also in different channels as well. And this becomes a continuous feedback loop at this point, because you're pulling out the performance data, you're finding which performs better, and then you're letting everyone know again. And this is the best way to actually remove silos as well. So the other things, stock and returns, having this in your feed can make a big impact into many things you can do. I'm going to talk in a bit more detail about that. And also margin, which, if there's one thing that I want you to do today, is go away and find out a way to start getting margin into your feed. So what I'm going to do is just take you through these 3 points: performance data, stock and returns, and margin, and just give you a couple of examples of things that you could be doing or thinking about doing with your data feeds. So with performance data, one of the things that you can look at is Google Analytics, and there's actually a really quick and easy way to get this into your feed. So you can go away and actually do this today if you wanted to. There's a Google Sheet add-on for your GA data. You can do a product SKU as a dimension. You schedule the report daily, and then you can just integrate this straight into your feed manager. Then, with a few little rules, what you can then do is set up some custom labels. The custom labels can be non-converter, i.e. they've never driven any GA revenue or haven't driven any GA revenue in the time window you're looking at. Very low, low, medium, high, very high. And then you can send this off to all the various channels so everyone knows which products are performing the best. One of the things you can do is actually obviously drive your spend towards the top performing products. You can also incentivize people to push lower converting products. You might want to do this through the affiliate space. You might say, okay, well, for these ones that aren't performing as well, we'll give you a bit of a higher commission so we can try and drive this sale through. So performance data, absolutely massive, needs to be in your feed. If it isn't, then make sure you get it in there as soon as possible. Other side of this, you don't want to just have your overall site performance in there. You also want to include channel-specific performance. CSS is a really good bit of data to put in there. Get your CSS shopping performance data in there. What you can do is you can schedule a report for the last 30 days. You can then push this into a Google Sheet. We use our own proprietary script, but there are many different ways of doing this. Once it's in a Google Sheet, you can then integrate this with your feed management platform again. Again, label up your products or whatever's in your data feed, very low, low, medium, high, very high, however you wish to do it and is most useful for you, based on ROAS. Why is this useful? Well, you can send this information out again to all the channels to show which ones are the most efficient products to be pushing. Generally, what we find is shopping is a hugely competitive space. So if things are performing quite well in the shopping space, then they're likely to perform quite strongly in other spaces as well. So it's definitely a bit of information that is worth sending out to all parties to make everyone work a bit more efficiently. Next one, stock. I'm not going to linger too much on stock levels, just to say that if you are monitoring stock levels, you can measure sell-through rates and predict stock outages, which I've mentioned. This can be really useful. I mean, especially in the travel sector, pausing advertising when, for instance, on an airline, there's 10 seats left. They won't want to advertise those seats anymore. They know that they're gonna go out of stock. Might not be the case right now, but when things get back to normal, people will go back to normal in terms of the way that they deal with plane load as well. The one I want to focus on here is returns and cancellations. This isn't as simple. There's no Google Sheet add-on, unfortunately. I'm sorry. You're going to have to work out how to do this internally to actually update your current systems. And what you can then push in is stock levels. You can have very low stock levels, medium. Sorry, this is on deletion rate, very low deletion rates, low deletion rates up to very high deletion rates. And again, you'll be able to optimize your campaigns to a true revenue figure. So you'll know that if some items get returned almost 40% of the time, your actual true ROAS is much lower. So having this information when you send out is of great use for optimization, but it also enables you to understand in one neat central location your product quality and demand. So again, very useful thing to start thinking about pushing into your feed. Margin, hugely useful, and I don't know enough people who are pushing this into their feed. This should be something that should be in there absolutely every single time. You want to, again, you're going to have to do this internally, but once you've got it in your feed, you can again label things up and then start sending these off to your various channels. Having low, if you need to just use labels, then use labels. But if you're open to certain channels seeing the actual information, then what they can do is they can optimize to a margin of ad spend. And again, this will make you hugely more efficient, and you can ensure profitability. I'm marking this as the key step in the current climate. If you're going to do one thing after this internally, and you kind of work out which one it is to do, then my suggestion is that you find a way to get margin into your feed and start optimizing to margin. All your channels optimizing to margin are going to be working much more efficiently. So give it a go, and if you have any questions on it, let me know. Once you've done this, you've got this system here that's got internal feedbacks constantly. So everything that happens in a marketing campaign gets fed back into the feed and then sent back out to all the channels to utilize the information from. Once you've got this full system in place and all the feedbacks are in place, it becomes a completely automated system as well. So having this automated system is just going to become more and more important in our lives as digital marketers as time goes on. So what you've done at this stage is you've laid the foundations, you've ensured that data is accurate, and you have a proper and rigid testing framework. You're now leveraging your own data, and you're doing amazing things with margin, you're doing amazing things with stock. You can now make sure that everything is being sent to all the channels in one go, and things are being centralized. To talk through this, there's just a very simple diagram that I can share with you. This is just what I commonly see when I'm auditing accounts, and the correct way to look at things. So you have a feed here in the center, and then the feed is pushed out to all the various endpoints. And what you find is that the social team have their own automation and processes set up. The affiliates have their own automation and processes set up. Display do the same. The paid search team are using hundreds of AdWords scripts rather than centrally coding it. All the other channels are doing the same thing. Effectively, what you've got is a huge amount of repetition, tests not being documented properly and not being available to each and every team. What is happening here is you're costing yourself a huge amount of money and time, and you're not being efficient with the data that you've got. Where possible, and obviously there are exceptions to this, what you need to be looking to do is putting your automation and your processes here and your tests here, and then sending out the results to all the teams like this. What you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up saving yourself a huge amount of time, a huge amount of money, and it's going to be way more efficient and effective. Make sure that if you are building testing frameworks as well, that they're open to all parties, open to all partners. Don't leave an agency out. Make sure that everyone is getting to see the data, and that way we can all learn together and work towards it. So you've laid the foundations, you've ensured your data is accurate and the testing is regular. You're leveraging your own data, and now you're making sure that no decisions are being made in a siloed manner, and that all decisions are being made in a central location. You can now move on to the exciting things. Now, what I'm going to do again here is just warn you and say, a lot of this stuff is really hugely exciting. You'll probably want to run away and go do this, but please make sure that you go back and ensure that you've achieved the other levels of the pyramid. Otherwise, this stuff will come undone. But I'm just going to talk you through some of the exciting things you could also be doing. So sports, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with Fantasy Football API. I know the teams within our business have effectively bid up and bid down and changed budgets based on the way individual players are performing in the league. Very exciting, has a lot of impact on campaigns, and they've done similar things with sports schedules. So if Man U are playing on the weekend, then maybe push the shirt for Man U. But that kind of logic also stands if you're working with any sports betting clients as well. Probably one of the most common and most documented uses of third-party data is the clothing and pharmacy industry using weather and pollen. Simple idea here on the pharmacy side is, as pollen count goes up and you've pulled this information automatically from the API, then you obviously want to be pushing more hay fever tablets because they're going to sell more. So that is the general idea on that one. Garden centers hugely vary depending on the seasonality. Different products sell in different seasons. So actually integrating seasonality effects back into your feed will actually enable you to push the right products at the right time. If you work with any bookstores that aren't Amazon, Amazon actually have a lot of open source APIs that you can utilize, which highlight their best sellers on site. You can use this same information to push books and push other products that you're working with in order to actually drive the best revenue. There's no point in some stages of going out and relearning all of this stuff for yourselves when there's already publicly available information to tell you how certain things are going to perform. So worth bearing that in mind for sure. And then everyone should be using social triggers where possible. Reacting to social trends, pushing products that are being spoken about, pushing themes that are being spoken about. They're all things that you can do using a Twitter API, using any API you want, and then pushing that information back into your data feeds. So I just want to take you through one very quick example of some stuff we've been doing recently. We've got a data feed. It has information in it with things like GTIN, MPN, and brand. For anyone that doesn't know, that's effectively just the barcode numbers. These barcode numbers are automatically processed and searched into Google. The prices and the merchant are pulled from there and then pushed back into the feed. So you can effectively do thousands of products at once and then have each product sat there with competitor prices and also the competitor name in there. You do a bit of number crunching and you can start labeling up your campaigns to show whether something's sitting at a very competitive price or a very expensive price and everything in between. What this is going to help you do is obviously make good marketing decisions. You know that if something's highly competitive, then it's probably gonna sell more. But you can also start overlaying this with your audience information. Are there certain groups in your customer base that no matter whether you're more expensive or not, are gonna buy the products anyway? And you can start overlaying your audiences with data like this to make better and more effective marketing decisions. Take this to the next level, and you can start making business decisions as well. You can start saying, okay, well, why are these brands always more expensive? How can we get the prices down on these? You can you can integrate these feeds directly with your actual merchandising teams and buying teams to actually, again, there's a feedback loop. If you can get those cheaper, then they feed back into your marketing and the marketing becomes more efficient. Two sides to this, both equally important, something that I highly recommend you start doing. I know that Google have their own APIs coming out as we speak that are in beta that are probably worth looking at that do this exact same thing. One example I absolutely love is what is better than using one external data source or using many. This is something that was done with a sports betting client of ours. They took team and player data, fixture data, their own odds data, and competitor odds, and combined it all to make bidding and budget and targeting and messaging decisions. Now, the cool thing on this side here is that this wasn't done just in paid search and this wasn't done just in display. It was done in a centralized feed location and then sent out for every single one of the channels so that they could all work off the same information and the same data. So really exciting application of using third-party data, and I encourage people to start looking at how data interacts with one another and how you can overlay many different data sources on top of each other. Just one thing to leave you with before we'll take some questions is, again, go over the pyramids. You've got to make sure you're laying your foundations. Data is accurate, testing is regular. You're using everything at your disposal from your own data perspective. You're sharing everything across all channels and nothing's sitting silent. And then you can start using external data to take your feeds to the next level. Having all this data feeding into each other and all of your memories that you've had from certain campaigns and from certain people really will fuel your marketing. But remember, you're not going to get there overnight. So do take the time to build this up gradually, and eventually you'll get right to the top of this marketing of the feed pyramid. Thank you. I'll take some questions.
Thank you so much, Fred. I'm just going to start with my question because I can. Which industries should be focusing on their feed right now?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I guess it is an interesting one. That there's obviously some industries are struggling, and others are absolutely flying at the moment. But I wouldn't say that there's any one industry that should or shouldn't be focusing on it. For instance, if you look at retail, some retail is doing amazing, some doing less well. But what you can do and make sure that you're doing this is that you're pulling your stock and availability in there. We know that fulfillment's going to become an issue as time goes on. For certain product lines, whatever it may be, if you're pulling this information in there, then you can make sure that you're making good decisions at the right time, predicting those stock outages, knowing when certain things are going to go out of stock is going to help you do a lot better in the current climate. My big point today: pull margin in. That is going to make sure that you stay profitable during this time. So make sure if you've got the capability to start sending out margin to people that you're doing that. Probably the one, if I go right to the other end of the scale, the travel industry, a lot of campaigns are paused at the moment. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be working on something. Data feeds are the perfect place to get going and starting to work on now. If you get your feeds in order and get your data in order, then when things get back to normal, you're going to hit the ground running and you're going to start beating out the competition much quicker, because you set all this up in the downtime, and swing right to the other end. Areas that are doing fantastic on a lot of gambling. As I'm sure there's some people on here who have taken up gambling in the last few weeks, but gambling sites are doing amazing business at the moment. But again, if they can push through their data feeds and ensure that everything's efficient in there, then they can actually maximize this time as well. So in short, everyone should really be focusing on their data feeds, but for different reasons.
So we're running over slightly, so I'm going to ask you one more question before we go. If you have a question, do put it into the chat, and if we don't get a chance to answer it today, we will make sure to follow up with everybody with the answers. So the next question is from Scarlett, and what is the best feed management platform on the market?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that we can't continuously assess about. I think there's about 30 feed management platforms that are on our radar, and I would say that a lot of them do very similar things. There's a couple that are slightly better than the others, but in general, they all do very similar things. I'd say the most important thing that you need to be looking for from a feed management provider is not necessarily the platform itself. I do think that they're all quite similar. The most important thing is that you're going with a feed management partner who has knowledge of the industry and understands the industry really well. So thought leaders, effectively. And there's a couple out there that do that much better than others.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much, Fred, for your time today. That was really interesting. Who knew feeds could be so interesting? Before we go, I just want to thank all of you for joining us today as well. This is part of our virtual learning series, and we have 2 more webinars coming up in the next couple of weeks. The first one is the future of e-commerce with Sophie Ellis from Facebook will be joining us on the 14th of April, and then on the 21st we have SEO to the rescue with Joe Komodo, who is our head of SEO. If you've got any questions, let me know. Fred is also hosting a virtual classroom course next week, the who, what, and why of feed management. So if you thought this was interesting but wanted to learn more practical takeaways of how to implement all of that, it's a great course to get involved with. Everybody who attended our webinar today will get 15% off with the code IGNITE15. To go look at that course, go check out ignite.incubeta.com, and that code will also work for any of the other trainings we're running in the upcoming weeks. So thank you everybody so much, and have a great rest of your day, and have a great Easter weekend. Bye.